All right, looks like we are now connected. Let me see here. We got the live chat going on, and we are streaming live. Welcome to the 11th house. Non-video, and it says here, okay, hold on. Clicking in, clicking in, clicking in. Come on now. Come on now. I'm here. What about you? Yeah, we're live. Looks like we are now connected. We're live. Live chat. Yeah, I can hear myself. What's happening out there? I'm just kind of bummed that I'm kind of bummed that for whatever reason I can't get my handsome face up on YouTube anymore. And I don't know what it is. I've gone through everything with OBS, and I've gone through everything with YouTube, and I just can't seem to launch my mug up there. So we're just gonna have to go with like this. You know, video killed the radio star. I don't know what it is. When I was a kid, I used to sit around at times and listen to old time radio shows, and I would go on a journey. And even in my early 20s, I would sit there and listen to Alan Watts. And I'd be blown away by what the guy was saying, or Mabe Russell. And there was no video associated with it. It was just a voice. And to me, there's something about the voice without the image that cuts right to the heart, right to the soul of things with people. At least that's me. But we live in an image-oriented world. So this week I'm going to be doing 15 minutes of flame. And I'm going to record the shows on video so I can put them up on YouTube and have people look at me because I'm so interesting to look at. Maybe I can wear hats and make funny faces and makeup and bring in some puppets. What do you think? Anyway, welcome to the live stream. It's a little late tonight. I'm sorry. I was watching the Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers game. And God, you gotta love the Celtics. I mean, Cavaliers have just been steamrolling everybody. And then tonight, the Celtics found a pulse, and they beat the Cavaliers at home. Kind of a major upset. And the guy that was the star for the Celtics tonight was a guy by the name of Marcus Smart, who is born on March 6th. He's a Pisces. And you ask yourself, well, how is a Pisces such a great athlete and can do so many fantastic things? You know, Pisces is a water sign. And just like Scorpio is a water sign and Cancer is a water sign. And when they get on a roll, when they get on a flow like that, I don't care what the water sign is, they're very hard to beat, and they can be unstoppable. I mean, think about just the power of water alone and what the power of water can do. Think about the power of water inside an individual and how they can channel that water. They're unstoppable once they kind of get on that roll. And the thing with Pisces is, you know, all the water signs tend to be tidal, and Scorpio tends to be stormy tidal, right? Cancer tends to be, how should we say this? Sort of emotionally tidal, fitful. It's fitful. It's not stormy like Scorpio. When a Scorpio is tidal, boy, you feel it, right? Tsunami style. When Pisces is tidal, it's strong or it's really placid. You know, Scorpio is really placid. It is rarely placid. We know that about Scorpio. Anyway, Marcus Smart turned it on tonight and became sort of the defining force there and a major upset against the Celtics. I apologize. I was just very into the game. Very into the game. Speaking of the game, well, we're in the cosmic game tonight. And we're going to be talking about astrology the week ahead and what's happening out there astrologically, what's going on in the world, what's going on in the most important places inside of astrology right now, and that's happening at a geopolitical level. Many of you know that Donald Trump has been in Saudi Arabia on the road trip. He was Melania. Melania didn't do the burqa. How about that? Or the hijab, or whatever they call it. I think there's variations, right? There's the burqa and the hijab. Anyway, no head covering for Melania. And they had a big concert over there with Toby Keith. And all the people in the audience were men listening to Toby Keith play. Just bizarre. Can you imagine all these Saudi guys listening to Toby Keith sing songs about America and whiskey and broken hearts and whatever the hell else Toby Keith talks about? I mean, it's kind of weird. And then apparently they had some lute player open for Toby Keith. Strange world. Well, we know that there is some interesting action happening in Trump's chart. We're going to try to get into some of that tonight. And I'm going to spill some beans here that might make you and maybe us think twice about what's going on. Remember now, he is not to be trusted. Nobody can trust him. Nobody can trust him. Not even his staunchest allies can trust him. I've been saying this for a long time. And the guy is under mortar fire. Absolute mortar fire from the left. Now they've appointed Robert Mueller to be the special prosecutor to see if there's any dirty dealings with Russia, Mike Flynn, and all these other characters. And Mueller, of course, was the cock blocker for 9/11 and kept us from really understanding what was going on with 9/11. So he's an obstructor of justice, another globalist, another Freemasonic, neocon, Zionist, sock puppet. Sorry, it's the truth, because he was there to make sure that nobody found out about 9/11. That was Robert Mueller's job. And here he is being brought in to find out what's going on with Trump. Look, I'm telling you right now, man, people are going to figure this stuff out, and it's happening faster than they think. It's happening faster. And every time they pull some kind of shenanigan or some kind of hijinks, it just gets more people switched on. Now, you got to be careful where that attention is being directed. The latest, and I've talked about this on the show on Friday, is the Seth Rich case. And George Webb is all over this. George Webb. I forgot who George Webb. Of course I knew who George Webb was. I forgot for like 48 hours. Oh, yeah, that guy. Yeah, Jeff Frenz doesn't have him on all that often. And I'm not sure why. He should have him on at least once a week. I don't know what the deal is there. Or if he does have him on, I'm just not a subscriber to the show, so I don't listen regularly. I just pick up what Jeff has every now and then. So the latest video from George Webb's world is that he walked from Lou's Bar and Grill, which is where Seth Rich was on that fateful night, and then walking to his place. And he walks it on video. It's about 9 minutes, and he's gone for 2 hours, and nobody knows where he was. So my good friends who listen to the show and fill me in on stuff from that world, they seem to think, well, they know that this is what George Webb thinks, that he was abducted, taken away for a couple of hours, interrogated, drugged, let go, and then brought back to his place, and then he was shot. Now, my question is why did they let him back out in the streets? Do you know what I mean? Why did they let him back out in the streets? If they really wanted to disappear him, why didn't they just keep him? Just keep him. Just Vince Foster him so you wouldn't see him for months and months and months until finally some dog would, happen upon the remains. right? Yeah, so why did they let him go? See, that's the big question. I don't think, okay, I may be sort of the Lone Ranger on this. I don't think he's dead. I don't think he's dead. Now, the reason why I say that is because I'm convinced that his parents were not feeling one iota of emotion. Now, there are people that are saying that the Clintons are strong arming them. Okay, that they're forcing them not to say anything. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. Knock on wood. I'd hate to be in their position. I hope I never am. And if I was, I wouldn't be keeping my mouth shut. I just wouldn't. They'd have to take me out. They'd have to take out anybody that knew me. So that posed some kind of a legitimate threat. I mean, that's just me. Of course, I don't have another child or a wife. I've got theoretically less to lose. My cat's looking at me. He says, "No, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't give up the beans." No, I mean, I get where people are coming from, that maybe this is the case, but there's something going on here. And one of the things that's been emerging with the Seth Rich deal is this guy, Kim.com. And he says that he was in touch with Seth Rich. Now, if you don't know who Kim.com is, he's one of these guys that, what did he have? He had something Bay that was basically a website where you could get anything, any movie. Pirate Bay. I think it was Pirate Bay, right? I think that's it. And there was a bunch of music. He was involved with some kind of a music service, and the RIAA came in and they shut him down. And he was like the sort of the new Napster, I believe. I think it was Pirate Bay. Anyway, he came out and basically, and this guy's a major computer dude. I mean, he's a major hacker, major coder, lives in Australia, and claims he was in touch with Seth Rich. Now, what's really interesting is that they're asking Trump about the leaks and how Russia was the source of the leaks. And Trump made this crack. He said, "You don't know who it is. It could be a 400-pound guy living in his mother's basement. Have you ever seen Kim.com? He's not 400 pounds, but he's probably pushing 3. So was Trump making some kind of an allusion to Kim.com and his weight, and maybe the fact that Kim.com might have been the person that was involved in the actual transference of the files? I mean, that could be the case. That could be the case. There's just something very strange and unusual about this whole Seth Rich thing. And, it could be really the Rosetta Stone for everything. Because if they can prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Seth Rich or Kim.com or whoever it was the source for WikiLeaks, then the whole Russia defense, and we've talked about this before, just goes away. Or the Russia offense, putting Trump on his heels for Russia, goes away. By the way, a couple of sources, one fairly public and one close to me, apparently the person of interest around Russia is actually Jared Kushner and not Donald Trump in the deeper circles. And if that's the case, I think it's very unlikely that Kushner gets outed. He's just way too protected. There's a firewall around Jared Kushner. there's a firewall around most of these people. Trump's is being it's being torched. But anyway, he's in Saudi Arabia, and he's whooping it up at Toby Keith concert, and I don't know what he eats over there. Honey cakes, coffee, Turkish coffee, I don't know. But they did a big deal with Saudi Arabia, $350 billion worth of arms. Wasn't going to go through, but Jerry got on the phone. And I think we got on the phone with Lockheed. Was it Lockheed or Grauman or one of these guys? I think it might have been Lockheed. And he said, oh, hey, can you give me a 12% discount on the radar? And they said, sure, 12%, not a problem. Give them 12%, done deal, $350 billion. $350 billion for Saudi Arabia. Now, I had a really interesting conversation with a guy who is probably on the outs of being my friend. You ever have one of these kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out matrix people? He's one of these people. Like, you can just get enough in, so that there's like some semblance of relatability, but then you go too far and just, you just lose them. So tonight he was saying, oh yeah, well, I'll take $350 billion for the Saudi Arabians any day. I can't stand those fucking Iranians. I can't stand that fucking Iran. He's just going off on Iran because he believes that Iran is the seat of the Salafists and the Wahhabists, and he's completely wrong. It's Saudi Arabia. Now, they might both be playing a little tag team here. They might be both playing a little WWE, but let's be clear, Saudi Arabia, I've hung out with Persians, and they're some of the coolest people on the planet. They're some of the coolest, most enlightened people on the planet. And I've never hung out with any Saudi Arabians. And that says something. You know why? Because when you get to Saudi Arabia, there's like a super elite class, and then there's everybody else. At least with the Iranians or the Persians, there's a wider swath of people, a lot of whom got, unfortunately flushed after the Ayatollah came in. And they're good people. They're really good. It's a very enlightened culture, and it's not perfect. And they're still under the same kind of cleric law and rule that was laid down during the Ayatollah. It never really changed. And so a lot of these people there are still puppets. They're not the threat that, we'd perceive them to be. Although now, apparently, Saudi Arabia may be instructed to spend some of that weapons money or those weapons on Iran. It's very, very, very positive. Or it's not positive, it's plausible. Anyway, so what did Trump do? Where's Mars in his chart? Mars is on what? It says Mars is 2 degrees away from his sun. S-U-N, not Barron, not Don Jr., not Eric. No, his S-U-N, his natal sun. And what happened? The guy did a $350 billion arms deal. There's your sun. There's your Mars on your sun right there. Mars being weapons and war and Gemini duality. There you go. There's also the true node on Trump's Mars. Just kind of right there. So we got a Mars on the sun within 2 degrees. Mars hits his sun in 2 days. It'll be exact. And then the true node, Mars transiting true node on his Mars, it's happening right now. So what do you get? You get an arms deal. Big fat arms deal, $350 billion to Saudi Arabia. Now, I had read that apparently Trump scuttled a false flag. This is what I had read, that the Israelis, how about that? The Israelis were going to run a false flag with laptops on a plane, because apparently you can control planes via a laptop. You can, turn a laptop into a bomb, and it's all that stuff. So this is what I've heard, and it's out there on the internet. It's not like I've got some special pipeline to Donald Trump or anything. That when he exchanged information to the Russians, he gave them some vital information about a false flag. I'm just throwing it out there. And you know what? Trump is capable of this. I'm telling you right now, man, this guy is totally capable of turning the tables at any time on anyone, including the Israelis. Very interesting, you know. I mean, if that's the case, if he really did scuttle a false flag, then, you know, here, let me see if I can I'll find this. This is good stuff. You guys out there are gonna dig this. Every now and then, Henry Macau, he gets some good stuff on here. So I want to read this. I think this comes off of if you look. I tell you the place to be. The place to be is Reddit/Paul and vote. Some amazing stuff's happening over there. Okay. This is a source of Victorus Libertas. And this is and I guess this guy is he's an insider. I think he's an FBI. This guy has turned up on the internet recently, and I'm going to read some of this stuff here. It says Tom asked the insider. So this is, I guess, Tom is the moderator, and there's more people that are kind of in on this. It's not just Tom. Let's see here. Tom asked the insider. The news is exploding that Trump shared intel with the Russians from an ally in the Middle East. And the ally is very upset. This is in regards to an ISIS plot regarding airplanes and laptops. So the insider is A. The ally not being named is Israel, and they are mad as hell at Trump. Israel is furious because they got caught with their pants down. Let's get to the point. ISIS was created by Israel and the U.S. to weaken Iran and topple Assad. If you don't know that by now, you're living under a rock. We've been talking about this now for the last 2 years, okay? Billions in profits are at stake. Israel has developed the technology to remote control airlines via laptops. A false flag was being prepared. Trump discussed it with Russian officials, exposing the plot. McMaster pitched, and now all hell is broken loose. Trump did a wonderful thing, in my opinion. We do not need any more ISIS false flags. If ISIS is eradicated, it will decrease CIA and DoD budgets, limit the amount of support Israel receives, and cause disruptions in the grand scheme to build a massive pipeline through Syria and ultimately the downfall of Iran and Russia. This is why ISIS is being kept alive by the New World Order. This is why such bold and frightening plots must be continually fed to the people to justify larger budgets and bigger hegemony. This guy says Russia is actually our only hope, along with Trump, that this diabolical system can be broken, shattered, as JFK once said, into 1,000 pieces and scattered to the wind. The technology to remotely control and crash commercial airliners was developed by Unit 8200, the Israeli Cyber Command. Does any thinking person actually believe ragtag militants would have the know-how and resources to develop this technology? Give me a break. While we are at it, you may want to see how close the Russian Metro Jet 9268 was to Unit 8200 when it went down. Tensions between Israel and Russia continue to grow by the day. Putin knows every trick in the Israeli arsenal, and he just happens to be a much better chess player than Netanyahu. Now here's another guy, James. He asks, what is the main concern, meaning the biggest case going on inside the FBI at this time? A. Israel. We are truly in danger of becoming the United States of Israel. They own 80% of our politicians. They have infiltrated our media, our tech companies, our banking systems. The average Jew in Israel or America is not a problem. And I agree with that, by the way. They are regular people, but the ones who serve Zionism or work in the so-called Greater Israel Manifest destiny poses a serious risk both foreign and nationally. Now just remember, let's superimpose. That could be any country. Any country. It could be Venezuela. It could be Tonga. It could be Ukraine. It could be Mongolia. Any country. But just it happens to be this one, all right? If we can move forward with a full investigation into the Clinton Foundation, Weiner, and HRC, it will eventually lead to exposing the vast reach of the Israeli lobby. The best thing we can do as a nation is to continue to bring this stuff to light. That's why platforms like Poll, hashtag Poll, POL, hashtag on 4chan, and so-called truth channels provide the people with some kernel of truth. So people are onto this now. We got a whole country, we got a whole planet that is digging. You know, we've got millennials, we've got the Pluto and Sagittarius kids. You know, we've got the old Pluto and Virgos. You know, we're all converging, and it's a relentless search now to uncover this, because everybody knows that the mainstream media is derelict with duty. They're derelict with their duty. So it's up to us to put this stuff together, and we got to be real careful because they're setting traps all the time, and we know this for a fact. So we got to be real careful, but it's happening. Back in July, I tried to let people know that their mandate for taking back the nation had to begin with a citizens' investigation into the CF. Now, please investigate Israel from Mossad to AIPAC to a huge and complex web of financial connections between Israel and our elected leaders. Promise you that you will find a slew of information if you look closely. And what you find will make you question how we can consider Israel or Saudi Arabia allies. Okay, here's some Seth Rich info. Anon, too, asked, what about Seth Rich and his murder? Expect a flood of new info regarding this. It was a sloppy hit and can lead directly to 3 senators and John Brennan calling in a favor from some of his Mossad buddies. This I've heard from more than one source. There is a leaker within the DC police, and fireworks will come soon enough. Well, we'll see. Seth Rich passed on over 44,000 emails to WikiLeaks. Why do you think the CIA is calling for JA's head? Because they must silence any investigation into Rich's execution. Start with Schumer and McCain and see where the breadcrumbs laid. Let's see. Get into Comey and Clinton here. Clinton Foundation. And it goes on and on and on. So this is over on Henry Macau. The source is Victorous Libertas, and I think there's another page here. You can go to Victorous, VICTURS, Libertas.com, and you can read some of this stuff directly. Is this the Robert Steele? Oh, this is Robert David Steele. God, I just don't trust this guy. This is his website. I hate to go back here. Because when I was reading this, it didn't seem like it was Robert David Steele. Maybe it's somebody else. Let's hope so. What's it say here? Okay, all right. So this is, okay, so this is not Robert David Steele. It's on his website, though. It says, we are fortunate and grateful to work with some really great insiders who want the truth to come out about the inner workings of our government's FBI non. This is the FBI guy that's been up on 4chan. Most known for showing up on 4chan from time to time with his AMA, has agreed to allow our audience to ask questions. Okay, it's out there. You know, you can, again, use your discernment, because it's very important to be able to do that. I still don't think Seth Rich is dead. I mean, if you think about it, why did they, if he was gone for 2 hours, why did they bring him back? You know, and shoot him, and then have him go through this thing where he was alive and conscious. I mean, the whole thing was weird. It's just weird. I'm waiting for somebody else to come to sort of my POV on this stuff. Anyway, so we have the Mars action in Trump's chart. That much is super clear. We got the Sun in Gemini, and it's all bouncing around with duality. We're in that dualistic dance. We're coming up on June 1st, which we talked about 2 weeks ago on the show. And what June 1st potentially has in store for us. It's also I have such great listeners, and one of them pointed out that on June 1st, I believe it is Bilderberger meeting in Virginia on June 1st. Is that right? I think so. So that's going on at that time on June 1st. Maybe they green light everything from Virginia with the whole Bilderberger crew. So let's just tear it all down. Amazing times in Gemini. It's going to get more chaotic. I'm just telling you. The duality, the electricity, the static, the ability to see multiple points of view, the ability to look at multiple scenarios. I mean, that's all there. That's all there. But in Gemini, it gets a little chaotic. Mars is 20 degrees ahead of the sun, but it's still this kind of Mars Gemini energy is. It's even though Mars is out there, there's still a conjunction. It's a very wide conjunction, and this is, in my estimation, how astrology works. It doesn't always have to be 5 degrees. It's it could be 19, 20 degrees, but the energy is still there. It's not as intense as like a conjunction of 2 to 3 degrees, but it's still happening. And Mars will be out of Gemini in what, about 10 days, 11 days, and it'll be in Taurus. So the Sun will occupy Gemini by itself. Venus is a long ways from Gemini with the Venus retrograde, and it's in Aries right now. Well, we're going to get more duality. That's just the way it is. We're going to see, sort of more of these polarized and opposing, number one, points of view, but also the ability to zoom out and kind of detach and see what's going on. And in this instance, Gemini can really be an ally because it allows us to kind of step back from the dominant paradigm or what's going on, the theater of the matrix, and be a bit dispassionate, because that's really one of the gifts of Gemini, is to be dispassionate. Now, when it's unchecked, that dispassion can result in, at times, a form of sociopathy, which is, it can happen. It can happen. A lot of Gemini people tend to have, maybe some planets in Cancer or some planets in Taurus, and it softens it up, or, sort of makes it a little more grounded. Like right now, Mercury is in Taurus. So, the conversation can be a bit more solid, let's put it that way. We're starting off the week with the moon in Aries. So when you go to work tomorrow, the moon's going to be in Aries. It's going to be a hot moon. And people, today, man, today was an interesting day, because we've also got this Moon-Jupiter opposition going on. And it's a very powerful opposition in a lot of ways. I was talking to this friend of mine. So I'm not sure how long he's going to be a friend, to be honest. I mean, he'll always have a place in my life. But, you just get to a certain point with people, and you just got to draw a line. You just got to draw a line. And today, this guy was, he's being really aggressive. Really aggressive when he's talking to me. And hard. I almost feel like I'm being interrogated. And it's like, I don't need that bullshit. He's done this before a lot of times. And sometimes I'm into it. Sometimes I'll, do a little, like a little debate team, get into it, debate with them, and stuff like that. But again, he can't really go into the deep matrix, so I can only go so far, or else I wind up screaming at him. And today I was just like, what, I'm just, we always get to this point, and I don't like it. I just don't like it. You're too aggressive, man. You're just too aggressive. And then he blew up, and he took it to another level, another level, another level. It's like, oh, man. Just not into this. So this is a Moon-Jupiter opposition. And tomorrow it'll be even more apparent. When you wake up tomorrow and you get in your car and go to work or whatever you do, and you plug into your world, your version of the Matrix. It is, you're gonna have a choice. You're gonna have a choice. Do you want to enter into the intensity of the emotional fray? Do you want to step back? You want to have more balance in your life? It expands. Jupiter expands the opposition. And Jupiter's about ready to go direct here soon, by the way. It expands the opposition with the moon, and you get to see just kind of where you are with everything, and how much you're willing to deal with that level of intensity. And sometimes it's worthwhile, and sometimes it's just not. It's an aggressive moon. Be careful on the highways, especially in wet weather. We've got a lot of Gemini in the air, Mars in Gemini, Moon in Aries, and we've got Venus in Aries at 16 degrees. So the moon, by the end of the day tomorrow, will be conjunct Venus. That's pretty amorous. That is an amorous moon. So if you are in a relationship, marriage, have some kind of chemical reaction with another person, that's passion. It can be pretty passionate. And it's all kind of coalescing now. And in about 10 days, Venus conjuncts Uranus, kind of a Venus-Uranus conjunction. Of course, the moon will conjunct Uranus on Tuesday. So that'll be an interesting time. Could be quite explosive with that moon-Uranus conjunction. And then settles out a little bit with moon in Taurus on Wednesday. It's a little more stable, let's put it that way. So emotions are running high and hot and hard and inside. High, hot, hard, and inside. If you're using baseball terminology, high fastballs inside. That's where we are. Now you can get passionate about your life too. You can get passionate about your emotions. You can get passionate about your relationships. I mean, that's fine. It's fine. But remember, we're dealing with this kind of counter force with Jupiter in Libra and opposing, really right now, the moon more than anything. Mercury's in Taurus. Sometimes with Mercury in Taurus, you say things and you mean it, and that's what happens. It's written in stone, Mercury in Taurus. Remember, the opposite sign of Taurus is Scorpio, so you're dealing with opposition. And that's a very fixed kind of polarity, right? It's like when you cross a Scorpio and you cross that line, you cross the line for good, pretty much. I mean, it's rare when a Scorpio lets you back in if they've been betrayed or something's happened to upset the emotional balance. What else do we have here? We got Mars. And by the way, that can happen similarly with Taurus because of the opposition. Now, Mercury in Taurus is slow. It's a slower Mercury. So thinking, wherever Mercury is in your chart, is very thorough and methodical. That's the nature of Taurus. Okay. It's 11:11. Talked about Mars and Gemini. It's at 20 degrees, so we're in the third decan now of Mars and Gemini. So we are in the Aquarian decan, which tends to be a bit more perverse, let's put it that way. More collective, more perverse, more kind of detached. When you get into the Libra decan, we're trying to figure out balance between how we use this Mars energy. Now in Aquarius, it's all moving towards some kind of collective push, and not always warm and fuzzy. Air is not always warm and fuzzy. It can be charming. It can be clear at times. It can be cold and cutting. That's the nature of air. And Mars in Gemini is probably the most fiery of the sort of the airy natures in some ways. See, we've got our friend Jupiter at 13 degrees. Now, like I said, it's been in opposition with the moon. What else is Jupiter doing? That's pretty much about it. Getting ready to go direct here, and I think, this has been an interesting time with Jupiter and Libra. I don't know how we can really characterize Jupiter and Libra, except that there's been this kind of, a cosmic setting of forces in play that I think are going to manifest when Jupiter finally goes direct. I was sent an email by a friend of mine, good friend, who's been on the show before, a buddy Mo, and he told me about this movie that Netflix will not air. It's called The Red Pill. And to me, this kind of typifies this Jupiter in Libra, sort of the setting of this balance of just trying to, kind of reformat and bring this natural relationship between men and women back together, which is completely screwed up. And The Red Pill is a movie about a feminist who decides to kind of take on, the latest version of the men's movement, A Voice for Men. She gets into that world. And apparently what happens is that she begins to have her feminist beliefs altered and does not come to a conclusion that these guys are all nutcases. She doesn't come to that conclusion, and she even realizes that they may have a point, and their beef is that men are treated worse than women, that men have less rights than women. And throughout this, I haven't seen it, but apparently they make a very good case. And then she also interviews third-wave feminists. Netflix won't show this. It's called The Red Pill. You may want to check it out. It's a very Jupiter in Libra kind of movie, and it's retrograde, right? Jupiter's retrograde right now. What happens when it goes direct? Keep the red pill kind of, in the forefront of your consciousness as Jupiter goes direct, because it'll be interesting to see what happens if here's the big if that filmmaker actually gets interviews on NPR. Maybe she has. Let me see if I get her name here. Hold on. I'm going to find out. So you are locked and loaded. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to give you her name. And then we're going to get into some charts and stuff here pretty soon, some visuals, so you guys can look at some stuff. Just waiting for this to pop in. Okay, the woman's name is Cassie J. Jaye. And the documentary is called The Red Pill. Okay. Check it out, look it up. Netflix bans the Red Pill movie because it has too much truth. A lot of people are on the fence with Netflix. They're getting sick and tired of Netflix and all that bullshit George Soros programming. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. I still watch it because it's got movies, but that is the bottom line there with Netflix. All right, let's go back into the stars. Let's see, we got Uranus, Saturn. Saturn at 26, Sag going retrograde. That's an interesting, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's an interesting movement. It's very slow. It goes back to 21 degrees. And then that's it. And then it moves forward. And by the time we get into late November, early December, we're moving into Saturn and Capricorn, which should be a pretty heavy time. So we still have some, we've got a few months here with Saturn in Sagittarius to try to, excavate some truth in our lives, both personally and collectively. So that's happening now as we speak. It'll be interesting to see how it continues to manifest, because really, if you think about this run with Saturn and Sagittarius, it's been pretty epic. to be honest with you. I mean, if we're trying to get down and deal with truth and get authentic and have it relating to the Saturnian sort of continuum, which is corporations and governments and the infestation of a draconian mindset into the world. It's been a pretty good run, with Wikipedia. I'm sorry, WikiLeaks and Assange. I mean, even if he is a cutout, even if it is a limited hang, it's been pretty good because at the very least, it's like switch people on. Even the Pizzagate stuff, switch people on. So we've had this happening for a while. The Hillary Clinton piece, and by the way, I think the Hillary Clinton stuff would have come out even without all that WikiLeaks material. But I tell you, the real downside to all this is that chicken shit Bernie Sanders couldn't do anything with it. I mean, whoever served up those 44,000 emails was giving Bernie Sanders the election on a platter. And Bernie Sanders never once talked about any of it. He never acknowledged any of it. He never put on his gloves and said, "Let's go. We're armed with 44 freaking thousand emails, and Hillary Clinton has been cop blocking me every step of the way. Let's go get her. Let's take her down." Never happened. You always talk, I want to talk about Wall Street. Wall Street's corruption. Wall Street's so corrupt. We have to take Wall Street out of the public arena. I'm being a little dismissive. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's true. It's true. He never once said, "Let's take them down. We have the goods. They're corrupt. They've stolen your votes, your process, every step of the way. And if you're a Hillary Clinton voter or a Hillary Clinton supporter, how can you stand behind a woman that stood in the way of the actual democratic process itself?" Sanders never once did this. Never. Not one. And I'll tell you right now, if Sanders had run against Trump, he probably would have won. Now, his platform is ridiculous, and it's almost impossible to cover all those bases financially unless you turn everything to about a 50% tax rate for everyone, and then all of a sudden people get their free college, whatever else he was like dreaming about. But I think he could have beat Trump. I really do. But we'll never know because he didn't have the balls. Yeah, I know, he was threatened, he got punched, whatever, shit. The frickin' world is at stake. Okay? The world's at stake. So, sometimes you gotta lay the shit on the line. Especially at that level, right? At that level. And Mr. Meek Virgo Bernie, he got Mars and Aries. He's got Mars and Aries. Where was it? Where was his Mars and Aries? I could make a joke about Uranus, but I won't. At that level, man, take a freaking stand. It's like, if you're a Bernie guy, how can you ever respect him after that? How can you? It's demoralizing. Absolutely demoralizing. And then you had to watch The Wicked Witch of the West every single night. Donald this, and Donald that, and Donald this, and Donald that. Yikes. That was Saturn in Sagittarius. Getting down to it. It started a revolution, I'm telling you right now, and it's no holding it back. People, God, I had this weird vision. I had this weird vision about 3 days ago. And it was literally people descending onto, what's his name? John Podesta's house with torches. I had this vision. I literally had this vision that people were going to seek out John Podesta, and there was going to be this weird kind of moment and certain super high levels of panic and stuff, and very, very intense. I just had it, and I wasn't wishing for it. I just saw it. Like, at some point, this is what's going to happen, and this is why the elites have their jets and their bug out places, in New Zealand. Hanging out with my buddy Murray down there in New Zealand. God, Murray and Jacqueline. There's a lot going on in New Zealand. There's a lot happening there. Military jets and flyovers and buzzovers. There's some stuff happening in New Zealand. Anyway, that's where they're going to go. But I'm telling you, man, there's going to be a moment in time where they're going to come looking for John Podesta. We are. If it's midnight, we're about 11:55 right now from a lynch mob. I'm telling you. And I think both sides. It's not just one side. I think the other side, I think the left has got their own lynch mob mentality going on too. And this is what the forces of evil have been stoking in many ways. And that's not to say that some of these people may not deserve a good scare. Really. I mean, really, when was the last time any of these guys or women were really kind of shaken up a little bit outside of their own sort of circle of filth that shakes them up every now and then? When was the last time they were shaken up? By the public. You know what I mean? Like when they had to stare people in the eye. I guarantee you. I know nothing. I don't know a lot about what John Podesta does on a daily level, but I guarantee you, if he's going out, he's got multiple bodyguards. If he's going out, he probably is, slightly undercover. He's not flaunting his John Podesta-ness. But there's going to be a time where one of these people are going to get cornered, and they're going to shit. Because they're going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong group of people. And it may not just be them being out. It may actually be, planned out. And then they're going to be terrified. It'll be their worst nightmare. And that will be a signal. That'll be a signal to the elites that their time is up. Because that Maginot line has not been crossed yet. But at some point it will. And I'm not sure. And I'm not advocating that. I am not advocating that. Because when that happens, then it's a game changer. And likely not necessarily an easy one. Let's put it that way. Uranus and Aries, maybe we'll have it before Uranus goes into Taurus. Because when Uranus goes into Taurus, the money changes. We've talked about this before. Assets change, money changes, everything. Manufacturing changes, it all gets transformed. Revolution. The revolution of the material processes. Neptune is in Pisces, 14 degrees. Oh yes, opposing my midheaven. Opposing my north node on my south node. It's going to be swimming there for the next year and a half. Can't wait. Pluto, 19 Capricorn, it is now moving backwards. This is Pluto's last retreat before it moves into the 20-degree zone. And once it hits 20 degrees again, it does not go back to 19 degrees. And we are in the final 10 degrees of Pluto, which really is, what, about 5 years away, finally. 2025, we're finally through all that Pluto and Capricorn. Let's see, Neptune is in, we got Neptune Pisces, true node 28 degrees, right on Donald Trump's ascendant, right? Yep, in a couple days, it goes retrograde, so it goes back and forth. A couple days, it is a true node. It's kind of right there right now. So of course, I'm sorry, it's Mars. So we talked about that. Chiron 28, Pisces. I'm going to do a big post on Chiron and Aries, and what we're going to expect with Chiron and Aries. It should be a game changer, in my opinion. You're listening to the Sunday Night Livestream. I'm Robert Phoenix, and we're going to get in some charts now, some visuals. There we go. Are you ready? All right. So, I usually do the charts that are connected to people whose birthday it is or close to, right? So this is no exception with today. This first chart I'm going to bring up is really this is a person who's one of the, how do I say this, unsung heroes of astrology. And when I bring her up here, you're gonna see why. So let's go to the desktop. It's time for the visuals. All right, here we go. All right. So I'm going to put her picture up here, and then I'm going to put up a chart. Seems my computer does its thing. There we go. All right. So here she is. This is Lois Roden. Lois Roden was one of the great keepers of astrological charts. And she's no longer with us. She had a data bank of astrological charts. And she wound up, I think, doing a deal with Astrodienst, Astro.com. And they took a bunch of, they took her charts, and they've been building on it ever since. But she is considered the grande dame of chart collection. So we're going to look at her charts. We're going to try to figure out what drives a woman like Lois. Look, she's got some pretty good legs, I have to say. She had some nice legs. So I never noticed Lois Roden's legs. Not that I was ever looking at Lois Roden's legs. I'm going to get in trouble here. I better shut my mouth. Okay. Let me find her charts, and that way you guys can see what I'm seeing here with the chart. We're going to go here. So let's see where we go. Let's browse this bad boy. There it is. Let's put up her chart. There's Lois's chart. Like that. So one of the things that I noticed was that, well, first of all, she's a Gemini, right? 0 degrees. So she's really into information. So keeping charts and birth times and all those things would be important to her, since, well, this is kind of what Gemini does. They're into information, right? So she's really guided by Aquarius, and Uranus. So here she is, Aquarius rising, and a lot of Aquarius rising people, Uranian influenced people, are into astrology. And what do we have? We've got a Uranus-Mars conjunction. And Mars is, energy and will. And Uranus represents change and, of course, astrology. And here we have the sextile to the sun. And her Mars is at 4 degrees. So she had a lot of energy, a lot of vitality, this woman. And also the identification with Uranus, with the Sun Uranus sextile. Now there's a square here with Moon Pluto, and I have no idea. I don't know anything about Lois Roden, other than the fact that she was one of the great keepers of astrological charts. I would assume that her mother was a very powerful influence in her life, but also may not have approved of what she was doing, because we have this rebellious square towards Moon Pluto. I would also venture to guess that she may have lost a child. And I know nothing about her, but this is very intense with the Moon Pluto conjunction, Moon being the mother, and Pluto being this planet of intensity and death and sex and transformation, and scoring off against Mars, which is very intense and can be very violent at times. And when we deal with Mars and Pluto squares and birth processes and sex processes, and Moon, the mother, in the 5th house, is a very good chance that she at least lost a child somewhere along the way. But she's got some deep, very powerful and deep emotional intensity. It could be, I think, a bit of a romantic, like at times, with the Moon-Pluto conjunction. But really, I mean, the interesting thing here is Saturn. Because Saturn is one of the planets that's associated with time, right? It is the planet associated with time. It is Kronos, and here it is, right at the top of her chart. She's got Saturn at, 19 degrees? Was it 10 degrees? Hold on. Looks like it's right around, let's see, that's 8 and 10. I think it's about, it's 10 degrees. Yes. It is 10 degrees. So she has Saturn at 10 degrees Sagittarius. So she's got a Saturn conjunction with the midheaven. So Saturn rules time, right? So she would be very much engaged in the process of timekeeping with birth charts. And then there's the trine with Neptune, which is it's a nice trine. It softens up Saturn. Right? Neptune softens up Saturn. Saturn adds more sort of body and fullness to Neptune. So she's a practical mystic with Neptune, Saturn trine. And then she's got this Saturn-Mercury opposition, again, because her opposition is in Mercury and in Gemini. There's the true node in Gemini too, working at home. There's a picture of her probably working at home, which is where she's supposed to be. So when we get in oppositions, we try to, we try to bring the oppositions together, try to bring the energy together. And here, Mercury, true node, and the Sun are all very personal in Gemini, and then Sagittarius is quite impersonal. So I think that the Sagittarius element, or Saturn, gave her an opportunity to get out to the world and publish and raise that Gemini energy up to the top of the chart. In this case, the opposition becomes an elevator. Correct? Yes. And then she had a Jupiter-Neptune trine, which is wonderful. It's very mystical. And in a lot of ways, I think that when you get into a Jupiter-Neptune trine, that if you follow your bliss, if you follow what you're kind of inclined to do, and even if it's a bit of a pipe dream, I think you get paid off. So if you have Jupiter in relationship to Neptune, sextile, trine, biquintile, quintile, even a kind of whitish conjunction, let your faith guide you and watch how you are rewarded. And with Jupiter in the second house, I'm sure she did just fine. Absolutely fine. Anyway, thank you, Lois Roden, for being such a great timekeeper and providing us with all kinds of charts for a very, very long time. Kind of an unsung hero of astrology in a lot of ways. That's what Saturn at the top of the chart would also do. So thank you, Lois. Let's see if we can get some of these images out of here and go on to another chart. Yes, let's take that out, and then let's take out image 9 right here. And let's move that. All right. Well, who's next? Who is next on the hit parade? Bringing him up on the holodeck. How about this guy? This is an interesting character. Interesting character. And when I bring him up here, you'll see why. We're going to look at his chart. Now, I've talked about this. I haven't talked about this guy in particular, but I have talked about this religion specifically. Hold on. There he is. Okay. He's a very mystical looking fellow, isn't he? This is Shoji Effendi Bahai, also known as Abdul Bahai. This is the guy that basically created the Baha'i faith. Let me bring his chart up here. Give me 1 second. There we go. We're going to bring his chart up. And if you don't know what the Baha'i faith is, we're Get to it a little bit here, and you'll be how should I say this? Schooled, I guess. I don't know. Schooled. Is that the right word? Let's try this chart. What's that? 938. No, it's Lois. 5230. Sorry, I'm just going through my charts here. This is it right here. Let's open it up. Yep. This is the dude. Here's his chart. All right, so this. Okay, so this guy created the Baha'i faith, which is a syncretic faith that blends all these different tenes from a number of different religions around the world. And he did it because specifically and solely he said he wanted to help create a new world order via religion or via a spiritual faith. And look at him. He's got that Aquarius rising. It's like Lois in Aquarius rising. Neptune in the first house in Aquarius, and Saturn in Aquarius in the 12th house. So that Saturn is working hard behind the scenes to create the type of order that this guy envisioned. And he's driven, right? Look at that true node up in the 10th house in Sagittarius. He is driven. He's on a mission. This guy had a mission. Now, whether or not he was part of some kind of nefarious plan to create a religion that would enslave humanity once Christianity fell by the wayside, and Islam fell by the wayside, that remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. If you go to the Denver airport and you look at those images of the Denver airport, which have been changed, by the way. Some of them have been altered. I don't know if people know that or not. But if you go to the Denver airport, the images have retained their integrity long enough to understand what the mission is, or what the symbolic interpretation and the predictive, programmable, hidden in plain sight messaging is. And and what comes through those paintings is that there is going to be a time where good and evil will clash. They'll clash. And there will be numerous fatalities and deaths. And out of the ashes of the clash of good and evil, the duality that has been essentially programmed and driven, something new will emerge. Because people will be tired, they will be emotionally spent, traumatized, they'll be ready for just about anything. This is really the story of the calendars, the murals inside the Denver airport. And of course, there would need to be some kind of religion or faith to insert once the old religions and the old faiths had been eviscerated and the majority of the believers have been eliminated. And could Baha'i be that religion that comes in and becomes the new world religion? I don't know, but clearly there was a time when it was crafted to bring together various elements of the world. This guy was the guy that did it. He was one of the drivers. His father is a fairly new, sort of new agey syncretic faith. There's that Neptune in the first house, Saturn working hard behind the scenes for an Aquarian-driven goal. It's a chart without a lot of conflict. You know, we got a square with Neptune and Mercury and the Sun. It's a bit deceptive, right? I mean, look, there are people that have Mercury-Neptune squares, Sun-Neptune squares. They're not bad people. They're not bad people. Their goal in life, theoretically, is to cut through the fog and to get to know themselves, to deal with the illusion of the self, and to theoretically get real, figure out where there's deception. And once they can get through that, then that square becomes something very powerful. You know, it's a faith that is built on a reckoning with sort of the end of self or the end of ego, especially with the Sun Neptune square. Mercury Neptune square is dealing with the end of sort of the intellectualization or ideas, so that you can come into something higher, theoretically, and dealing with the confusion, self-talk, deception, things like that. Anyway, he has it here in the chart. I got in trouble. I mean, I was doing some Neptune stuff, and I got kind of, I wouldn't say whacked, but I was reminded by some people that, hey, I've got these aspects, and I'm not that bad, and I get that. It's true. He's got Moon and Leo right over there, so this guy had a lot of ego, right? So on the surface, they saw that beautiful Neptune. Oh, you're so spiritual. You're a spiritual man. Oh, you have such fine qualities. You bring people together under one vision and one God, and one cosmic force. And your dedication to this is, we see it behind the scenes, working every day, relentlessly. And then over there, there's that moon. Oh, good. Keep telling me that. Oh, keep telling me that. Oh, it feels good. That feels good. My Leo moon just needs that stuff. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Excuse me. But, relationship would be very important to this man. Finding somebody that loves him. Right? Gets him so he can be personal. You have that personal love with Leo in the 7th house. This is all this impersonal stuff he's got in the 1st. Correct? He's a passionate guy. He's got a moon, sun, Neptune sextile. It's a lot of moon, sun trines or moon Neptune sextiles. I don't. So these people who have them in their chart tend to be pretty intuitive and generally have a pretty interesting flow between the masculine and the feminine. And then he's got a moon Uranus trine, a moon Pluto trine. He's able to channel a lot of emotion and hang out with a lot of different types of emotional experiences. Venus-Pluto square could be, sort of the receptor of the broken heart, but Venus is in the 6th house here of Dharma and work and purpose, and he's squaring off against Pluto here, and that's by any means necessary sometimes, and that's not a really great trait when you get a Venus-Pluto square. It could be the fact that he might have suffered a setback in his work at some point, so he decided to have a bigger kind of mission in play. You see, these things can work a couple of different ways. Jupiter, Sun. He's got a Jupiter Sun trine. Oh man, this guy. Let's see, Jupiter Sun sextile. This guy could move mountains with his faith. I'm telling you. That Jupiter's right there at the end of Pisces too. Look at that. Interesting chart, driven by the mission. True node in Sagittarius is quite zealous, quite zealous in the 10th house. It's the missionary man. Interesting guy, interesting chart. We'll see what happens with Baha'i as we continue to burn through the ideological karma of the planet at an accelerated and very, very powerful rate and temperature. All right, let's see, let's get that out of here. Let's go, yes, adios. And let's bring that out of here. Adios and yes. Okay, we got a couple more here that I want to bring up. And not so obscure. A couple of these characters you will recognize, if certainly not by face, but by name and obviously reputation. Let me see if I can go in here and find some of these characters that I've lined up for your entertainment purposes. Here we go. This is, I tell you, man, this guy has really, in a lot of ways, become a martyr for our time. Not even a martyr, he's a prophet. He's a prophet. And if we look back on who he was, if I could, I tell you what, if he still had his faculties about him and I could interview him, This is a guy that I want to interview because he was so far ahead of it all. And when I bring him up here, you'll see who I'm talking about. There he is. It's Ted Kaczynski. Today's Ted Kaczynski's birthday. The twisted genius of the Unabomber. I actually brought up Ted Kaczynski's manifesto PDF, which by the way, I highly recommend you read it. I highly recommend. It is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. And all these people are like, he's backing the Unabomber. Not that I'm probably on some list somewhere, but I've talked about Ted Kaczynski before. I don't really care. But this guy was a genius, and he knew what was going on with technology. Now, I don't agree with his methods. And, look, that was a time when we weren't really paying attention. Had we gone through that with Ted Kaczynski, and during a time when we had, let's say, social media or Reddit or votes, we might be having a very different discussion about this guy. So what does the chart say? It's a pretty good rating for the chart. Not the best, but it's pretty good. Well, he's a Leo rising, unlike our first two people tonight. We were both Aquarius rising, so obviously he is here to both Lois Roden and Abdul Baha'i were driven on a personal level by some kind of higher mission or higher order to jack into the collective and to communicate and merge with the collective on a daily basis. This is what Aquarius does, by the way, on some level. Leo here is not about that. Leo's about jacking into the persona and passion and humanity and heart. And there's that moon in Leo. It's in the first house. It's sensitive and it's passionate. And he's got a lot of interesting things going on in that 12th house. He's got Mars and Pluto. Of course, Mars represents hidden enemies in a classic astrological chart. Pluto, intensity, depth, and this guy's, he's no bullshit. Pluto sextile Sun, Pluto, Saturn, Uranus conjunction. Pluto, Saturn, Uranus conjunction. How about that? That is pretty intense. And Pluto, Sun, Saturn is at 1 degree. And Gemini and Uranus is at 0. So they're all like bunched up. So he's radical, but he's also like lucid. And, he can see the future. He can see the radical future he talks a lot about technology. And again, I highly recommend you download his PDF and the manifesto. It'll blow your mind. It'll absolutely blow your mind how prescient this guy was. He's got a trine with Sun, Neptune, Saturn, Neptune, so he's guided by idealism. There's an idealism here. When you get into Neptune, Sun trine, Saturn trines, it's a lucid, sober idealism. Now here we have Mercury, Jupiter conjunction, which big brain, right? Jupiter blows up Mercury, pun not intended. Jupiter expands Mercury, and Neptune squares it off. So he may be. Okay, so again, let's play with this Jupiter, Mercury, Neptune square. Maybe he's deluded. Maybe his message is not understood. Maybe his message is not clear enough, contorted. Because to be honest with you, let's get real. How many people read the Unabomber's manifesto when he was kind of on the run? That was what, the 90s? I don't think too many copies of Ted Kaczynski's manifesto were floating around. And if people had that manifesto in their hands, they might have seen this guy very, very differently. So here we have that Neptune square to Jupiter and Mercury. Well, look where they are. They're in the 11th house, which is the collective. So perhaps his message was misunderstood. He's in the lockdown, serious lockdown prison. He's in a supermax. He'll never see the light of day. He's not a dangerous man from the perspective that he's going to go out and blow more shit up. His ideas are dangerous, and he's seen the future. And boy, interesting chart and a unique and singular individual. Look at that headline, the Ron Brown tragedy. How about that? People remember Ron Brown and how he was on that plane with all those business leaders, and they were going to Kosovo, and they hijacked the signal, and they ran that plane right into the side of the mountain. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's what they did. He's a bright guy. Look at that Mercury moon sextile. So people that anytime you have planets in aspect with the moon, and I'm talking generally positive aspects here. It's got the moon square to the sun, Venus, Mars squared. I can tell you right now, Ted Kaczynski probably did not get along with women. Just saying. But anytime you have a positive aspect to the moon, it gives the individual kind of a sixth sense, an intuition about things. And with moon in the first house, I mean, clearly he was picking up on a lot in his environment. Yep, a lot. All right, so let's. I'm not going to get into readings manifesto. Just go find it. Go find it. It's really fascinating and terrifying. Okay, we got one more chart for tonight, and I think you guys are going to like this one. This is a source that everybody knows. I'll just have to put up his photo here, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Let's see, where is he? Over here, there you are. There he is, Robert Zimmerman. His birthday's coming up, Gemini. So I wanted to bring his visage up here because I wanted to look at his chart from this perspective that he did not write his own music. It's true. I first heard it from, not just music, but words. Okay, so we're talking words. All right, Mr. Nobel Prize winner. All right, let's see what we got up here. Let's do this. It is. All right. Here's his chart. Sagittarius rising, of course, Sun in Gemini. So, did Bob Dylan write his own lyrics? Question mark. This is interesting. It's very interesting. Okay, so his true node, let's punch this up here. His true node was at 28 Virgo. 28 Virgo. Remember that. 28 Virgo. There we go. This should be interesting. I'm just riffing here in real time. This should be interesting. You'll see why. Just a sec. 28 Virgo for that true node. Puts it right on my sun. Let's see what we got here. Could this be the smoking gun? Could this be the smoking gun? I think it is. All right. All right. So let's go back to his chart. I have found the smoking gun. Let's go back to his chart. Get back into OBS. All right, so he has his true node at 28 Virgo, and there's Neptune there. This is interesting. Am I right? Because when you get Neptune around the true node, it gets really fuzzy. The true node gets really fuzzy. The purpose gets fuzzy. Ninth house, publishing for sure. Songs get published, just like books get published. So what do we have here? Aha, we've got a square to Mercury. Hello, right? Mercury square. Hello, right there. Boom. So we know, and again, apologies to a lot of Mercury Neptune square people or Mercury conflicted Neptune people, that there can be issues, challenges. Now, sometimes those challenges are offset by other aspects. So let's say, for instance, Robert Dylan or Robert Zimmerman had a sextile to Mercury. He doesn't. Let's say he had a trine from Mercury. Nope, doesn't. Nope. His Mercury is at 21 degrees and his Venus is at 12. It's a very wide conjunction. So his Mercury is kind of out on its own, and it's in the 7th house, so he has to work with people with his Mercury. He has to partner with people with his Mercury, correct? Am I right? Yes, because that's the nature of Mercury in the 7th house. And it's squaring his Neptune, and it's squaring his true node, and it's also squaring his south node. Now we have all these planets here squaring off against Mars, which is in Pisces. Mars square Moon, Mars square Jupiter, Mars square Sun, yeah, it's all square, 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 square. And, you know, Mars is not quite in the 3rd house. It's generative in terms of creativity and imagination, things like that. It's squaring off against all those planets. Sometimes it can be a dynamic force, and sometimes not so much. It can be dissipative. Now, Miles Mathis is an interesting character, and he's really drilled down on a lot of people, a lot of situations, to put it that way. And one of the things that he went after was Bob Dylan. One of the people he went after was Bob Dylan. He tried to figure out if Bob Dylan wrote his own material, and he came to the conclusion that he did not. And he tried to find somebody who was a contemporary of Dylan who actually wrote Dylan's material. And the guy he came up with was Leonard Cohen, because he essentially looked at the kind of the syntax and the subtext of his songs and Leonard Cohen's songs, Dylan's songs, and so there was only a few contemporaries who could turn a phrase, because like some of Dylan's work. And Cohen's kind of that guy. He matched it up. Okay, so remember what I said. What was that true node again? What degree? Degree is that true node? It was what? 28 Virgo. Do you know when Leonard Cohen was born? Leonard Cohen was born on the 21st of September. Puts his sun at 27 Virgo, right on Bob Dylan's true node. How about that? Yep, how about that? Not only that, but Leonard Cohen has a Mercury-Jupiter conjunction, which puts both of them in Bob Dylan's 10th house. Bingo. Right there. Bada bang. I think from an astrological perspective, just looking at Leonard Cohen's sun on Bob Dylan's true node, we got a match. We have a match. Interesting stuff. Okay, well, let me just check in with what's happening in the chat room. I think we got a chat room going on here. Let me find it. Oh, hey. That was listening to Elmo too. Yes, please do wear hats. Okay. All right, so what's going on, people? It's kind of late out there, and we have got 38 people watching. Let me just chime in and say hello to everybody in the chat room, on the chat side of things. Hello, people. There we go. Thanks for showing up. Any questions out there if you're still listening? Hello, Paul Gregory. Hi, Lynette. Hello, Alice. Oh, Alice says, been feeling pitchforks and torches too. Yes. They're coming. Anybody want to ask me any questions? And we're on the air here for another few minutes. We got a bit of a late start, 10:30, so 90 minutes, not too bad. 90 minutes for your American dollar, even though there's no dollar spent here. All right, nobody's saying anything. It's okay. All right, so why don't we wrap it up? That's a wrap. That's a wrap, Jack. Thanks for listening. And I promise I'll do my best to be how do I say this, on time next week. I mean, I got distracted by the game. What can I say? I guess I could say I promise I won't get distracted by the game, but I can't make that promise. It's such a good game. I love watching the Cavaliers lose. All right. Well, that's it. I'll be back tomorrow morning with the world famous 15 Minutes of Flame. By the way, apparently David Icke now has 15 minutes of daily news. Does David Icke listen to me? I bet you Richie Allen listens to me. I bet you he does. People take my ideas every now and then. I know they do. I know Alex Jones listens to me. I've seen it. My own. Well, I haven't seen him listening to me, but I've seen him take stuff. And I know Jeff Rentz listens to me too. So, hey, at least I'm getting the cream of the crop. All right. Use your head. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open what's possible. And stay cool. Stay calm. Stay chill. Let's just, keep doing our thing. Keep getting better. Keep staying grounded. Keep loving each other. And call them as we see them. And bringing in the higher forces, the greatest stream of love that's possible. God Almighty. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll see you tomorrow.